Welcome to Work Life by Design. I'm your host, Mel Marsden. If the last few years have taught us anything, it's that change is inevitable and we no longer need to go to work to work. As a workplace dynamic strategist and the founder of Community, I draw back the curtains on my own business, the clients and projects that we deliver, along with tapping into the knowledge and insights from academics, business leaders and champions of change. I believe that our environments have the power to positively influence our behaviour and performance, inspiring our human potential. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Work Life by Design. Now, I have a very exciting episode for us today. I have invited my coach, Michelle Broadbent, along to interview me about my upcoming book, The Next Workplace, Designing Dynamic Environments that Inspire Human Potential. Now, I've invited Michelle along to turn the tables and interview me about what it's been like to write a book, what's it about, who's it for, and what are some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. Now, this has been an incredible journey for me over the last 4 years of pulling this book together. And I share with you behind the scenes what inspired it, how it came about, what the process of actually putting my ideas and my thoughts onto paper was, who's helped me along the way, and where I've had to let go and where I've had to reassess my expectations of actually building and creating this book. But this is something that I am incredibly proud of. It has been a labor of love to bring this to life. And I'm so excited to now see that it is almost available for you to be able to get your hands on it. I encourage you, if this is something that is resonating with you and you've enjoyed listening to the podcast, go jump on the website, jump on the waitlist there, and you will be the first to know when it is available for you to order. And also, please, I'd love you to come and celebrate with me as I take the book on tour. I'll be launching in Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne, and I would love you to come along and celebrate with me as we reflect on what has been an incredible 2 years that we have been living through, COVID and pandemics, and how that has transformed our whole experience of work and why we go to work and what our workplaces actually mean to us. So this is something that I am extremely passionate about. And, if you are here and you are tuning in, then I'm sure that it is something that it lights you up as well. And it is something that you are passionate about as well. For those of you who don't know Michelle has been my coach for probably the last 2 years. She's been on the podcast before, where she joined me and I introduced you to 3 of my coaches that have supported me. But Michelle is a business strategist. She's got a 20-year career that has been supporting female founders across a really diverse range of industries. She is so passionate about seeing other women succeed, and she's supported countless women as they're stepping up from solopreneurs to CEOs in their own businesses. She's smart, she is supportive, she is all about helping you get really clear on what is important and what is just noise. And she has been an incredible wing woman to me over those past 2 years. And she has seen me through the ups and downs of writing this book, the challenges that we've been through with the business, through COVID, me welcoming a baby into this world, and really just being a fantastic sounding board to get my ideas distilled and concise and clear to be able to bring this book to life. So she was the natural choice for me to invite here today to turn the tables and to interview me. So without any further ado, please let me introduce you to Michelle and let's dive on in.
Mel Marsden, welcome to the Work Life by Design podcast. The interviewer has become the interviewee. Welcome.
Thanks, Michelle, and thank you so much for coming and doing this episode with me.
I'm so thrilled that you asked me to do this because I think so often when people bring things into the world, it can sort of feel a little bit weird to be talking about it. But because I have been so exposed to the whole process, I'm looking forward to really getting you to share the warts and all of bringing this book to life with the listeners. So first of all, massive congratulations to you for finishing this baby.
Thank you. Yes.
Oh, God. I think it's so nice to just celebrate that milestone, the actual completion of a book, because for a lot of people there is a big lag time between completing and publishing. not so for you, which we will get to. But I really think that you should be celebrating this because you are my absolute hero just for getting this done in among all of the myriad of competing priorities, including running your business, birthing your other baby, your little beautiful Nashi, and just doing it all as you have done so graciously. So I think keeping with the baby theme, I would like to talk about the conception of this book. How did it come to be?
Okay. So, well, firstly, thank you very much for that lovely introduction. And yes, it's very exciting to finally have finished this book because it did start off about 4 years ago. I actually started writing this book when my older baby was 4 years old. So we've been doing this for 4 years now. And the reality is that I started writing a book because I was told that I needed a book. And again, just like this podcast, I was told I needed a podcast. I went, well, I need a little bit more to actually latch my teeth into than that. I need a little bit more of a why. And so I started having a bit of a think about, well, what is the purpose of this book? Why would I create this book? You know, this was pre-COVID. Workplaces I found were my niche and something I'm extremely passionate about, but was also a little bit challenged with clients understanding what opportunity they had with their workplace. A lot of people didn't know that what I do is a thing. You know, it's a bit of a mix of facilities, it's a mix of people and culture, it's organizational psychology. You know, I have this melting pot of, resources that I bring to an organization. And so many businesses just were blown away with what we do because they didn't understand that this was even something that was available to them. So that was kind of like me going down this rabbit hole of going, well, why do I really want to write this book? And it was about educating people more widely, about providing them with a bit more of an understanding about how the physical workplace actually influences the performance of their business, the behavior of their people, you know, the happiness of their people. And so that's kind of how it all started. And it was through one of the business programs that I was participating in that encouraged us to write this book. And I thought, oh, there's no way I'm going to write a book. I'll have a crack at it. You know, I'll follow the process. I'll do the things that I'm supposed to do to sort of complete this business program. And that's kind of where it started. And I actually started by bringing together all of the content that I'd already created over the last sort of 10 years prior to that. So the blogs I'd written, the thought papers that I had started, all of those ideas. And that's where it began, by collating all of that and then identifying, well, where are the gaps of the further information that I really wanted to communicate. And that's kind of how I mapped out the contents page, and it went from there.
That's really interesting that you talk about that because I think that's where that phrase, like everyone's got a book in them, comes from. Because I think, you know, a lot of people who run their own businesses, when you are generating a lot of content, you can almost forget how much is already in the vault. So is that essentially what you did? Like you were kind of mining the vault of content that you already had?
Yeah. So we actually had a book coach through the program to help us get started. And part of that process was actually sitting down and mapping out the contents page. So through that program, I had already created my workplace dynamics blueprint, which is the overview of how we actually deliver our consulting services into organizations to take them on this journey of transforming their workplace. And within that, there's a series of steps and ideas and thought methodologies that sit behind that. And it was a matter of sitting down and kind of writing out, well, what would all the headings be underneath each of those sorts of chapters? And then I went and I thought about it and I went, well, I've already written a blog on that and I've already got this piece of content over here and I've got a thing mapped out about that I haven't written yet, and that actually fits in here. And so when I started and I sat down, I'd actually already written 15,000 words of my book before I'd even put pen to paper. So yeah, so that's how it kind of happened. And then the advice that we got was to sort of map it out into 250 word chunks. So have everything ready. So if you're sitting in a cafe and you're waiting for a client or whatever it is, you can pull out one of those topics and you could start and you could, bang out 250 words to get that moving.
That's genius. So it's literally like chipping away. And when you go, oh, you've got to write a whole book, like that can feel very, very overwhelming. But the fact 250 words at a time, I mean, that's half a blog post. That's like a long-ish Instagram post. Like that's actually not a lot to have to work through. And I think for someone like you who had to fit this in amongst everything else, which I will get to. But I want to just go back to the book coach because that's really interesting. And I think that, I mean, it definitely pricked my ears up, and I'm sure people listening will feel the same. How did you go about finding the coach, engaging the coach, and working with a coach?
They were provided as part of the program. So it was kind of like a one-day masterclass that we were taken through, and then they brought in a book editor on the second day, and they were the person who helped us work through the title, of which my title is not the same title I started with. So there's always a working title I've found, and it went through a couple of iterations to what the title is now, being The Next Workplace. But the process of actually sitting down and mapping out the contents page, we used a series of, the old-fashioned library cards, the little white index cards, and they were spread out all over the floor, and I think I've actually still got a photo of it, and I'm gonna dig that out now that we think about it, because this is all part of the history of bringing this together. I sat down and got all of those index cards put into a Word document, and then I actually had my assistant help me, and she went and mined everything off our website, all the blogs, and started putting it together, and then we just kind of color-coded everything about what was finished and what wasn't, and went from there. The other thing that I would say in this too is I found the idea of writing a book extremely overwhelming and thought, oh, there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to write a book. And so I've actually approached this book as a series of blogs. It's a compilation of articles, because when I thought of a book, I thought of chapters and everything's very logically ordered, and, one idea flows into another. And now that it's finished, it actually does read like that, which is quite surprising to me, having come at this with the idea of just creating a series of articles. I thought about it as more of a magazine that had a series of topics addressed in it. And I found that far more digestible to actually pull it together. And that's helped me in actually preparing and writing the book.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned that you had your assistant helping you. So tell me about, in terms of how you got it all done. I know you are one woman. So talk about like the people that were helping you, but also just the process that you went through to actually get it written.
Yeah. So once we had that contents page mapped out, I then said, there's a blog on this, there's an article here, let's go and find that. And so we went and, as I said, mined the website and then copied everything into a singular document. And then I started chipping away at it as we had been suggested. It was like, here's a topic. Next time you've got, a half-hour gap, start writing it. And sometimes it was a bit piecey. And I did find that actually getting in the mindset base of actually writing the book quite challenging, because it's not like this is my life story, or it's not made up. It's very based in fact. There's a lot of resources, a lot of research that goes in behind this. So for me to actually write 250 words, 500 words, 1,000 words actually was very, very time consuming, because I had to fact check a lot of things. I had to actually get the science that supported those ideas, because in the book, it is sharing my philosophies and the way that I work with clients to help them transform their workplaces. But there is theory that sits behind this, and it was about making sure that I had the right language, the right terminology in there, that I was citing and referencing the right pieces of research that actually validated and supported the points that I was making in the book. So it took me quite a bit of time to do that. And it has been a very start-stop process. It's taken 4 years to do this. And there were points in time where I would carve out, half a day, and I would go and sit in a coffee shop, because I'm one of those people who likes to have that ambient noise around them to actually be able to concentrate. So it was a really mixed bag through that period of time of carving out time to actually sit down and write. But again, being a creative person, being told to sit down and be creative, it doesn't work. So I had to find other ways to do this. I then got to a point where I just sort of stagnated for quite a bit of time, and I was chatting with another lady who had written a book, and I said, look, I'm really struggling with this. I know you've written books. What's your secret? And she said, I've got this editor, and I literally write shit on a page and she turns it into this amazing words. And I said, I need her number. Give it to me. So that's how I found my editor. So Anne Maynard, she's actually based in the States, and she has been the wizard behind this. So she then took a spin through the manuscript and basically gave me writing tasks and said, okay, I need these sorts of things from this particular piece here, like the introduction. Tell me about who you are. Why have you written this book? What are your design principles? And so that was it. And she actually then helped me restructure chapters. So she moved things around to get better flow from them. And she did clean up those words a lot and helped me really polish it. And, what I talk about is a really complex process, and it's a complex idea of bringing together all of these different elements that make up our workplaces and transforming it for something for the future. And so she's really helped me simplify that language. And when she didn't understand, she'd like, okay, that doesn't make sense. And so I'd have to rewrite it and dumb it down from what was going on in my brain because it just didn't resonate with the reader. So that was a really helpful process of getting through that. And then as we got to the pointy end, I literally had to sit down and carve out days to just get my head in it and finish it. Or, I'd get my husband to take the kids out of the house for 3 hours, and I would literally sit in a box in this room. I put my glasses on so I look like a reader. I'd tie my hair in a bun and stick a pencil in it. I had a different persona to actually kind of get that zone. So there's a few tricks in there that I had to employ.
And they're great tricks. And I think, what you're illustrating here too is that like it does take a village, and you started the process way back at the beginning with a coach, and then, brought in your editor, had some help from your assistant. And I also, coming back to what you mentioned about it being magazine-y, what I love about this book is it's a gorgeous looking book. Like, it's beautiful. And there's, the illustrations and that sort of thing in there. Did you get help with the creative stuff as well? Because you are super creative, but again, you are one woman and that stuff is very time consuming. So did you get help with that as well?
I certainly did. I have a fabulous designer, Emily, who I've seen her work. So she's actually done a lot of work with Lisa Messenger and produced her gorgeous books. And that was a bit of the inspiration too, is when I looked at some of the work that other authors were doing, such as Lisa, they weren't sitting down writing black and white textbooks. And this is certainly not a black and white textbook. I never wanted it to be that. And as I said, I approached it from that compilation of articles, of worksheets, of activities, of checklists. So there are actionable resources that are going to be in this book that can help move someone forward from where they are. It's not read this and, good luck. It's take this, apply it here, engage the team, do this exercise, complete this activity, have this conversation. All of that's in there. And I really wanted this book to have its own personality, and it does. And I'm so thrilled with how she has actually imagined this book for me, because I really gave her creative license with it. I said, here's kind of the color palette. Here's the look and style that I kind of want. I want this to be an inspirational book. I want someone to be able to dip in and out of it. I want them to be able to go and download resources. And we used, these vector graphics that are through it. And you'll see that when you get a copy of the book. It's got these beautiful illustrations in it that it just helped tell the story as you move through it. It's not dull by any means. It's colorful, it's creative, and it's beautiful. I had a vision, and I went to Emily and we were going to start this book pre-COVID. And I got distracted with COVID and with everything else that was going on, and I couldn't wrap my brain around it at that point in time. And then Emily had a baby, and she's like, I can't do this for you now. And so we kind of went, oh, we're back to square one. But then by the time I'd actually got my shit together and finished this book, I went back to her and I went, hey, so how old's Bub now, and are you ready to get started? And she's like, yes, thank God. So like divine timing, it all came together, and I had to relinquish control of that, but I had to find someone who I trusted to be able to bring that to life, and it's just been a magic result. She's done an awesome job. Enjoying the episode? I would love it if you would share this show with just one person who you think it would inspire. Just one. The more we can share the insights of what it takes to make work work, the closer we are to elevating everyone's experience of work.
Speaking of COVID and timing and all of that sort of thing, sort of moving away from the process of writing the book to the actual content of the book. Because, if we rewind 4 years when this idea was percolating away, we were all merrily living our lives, going into offices. Work from home was, wasn't even really a concept. It was like for a very, very small percentage of people. Most organisations were like, no way, like everyone needs to be here under the same roof. And then everything changed. So I would love to know how that impacted what the book was actually going to be compared to what it is now?
In some ways, I am incredibly surprised because the book is still, I would say, 95% of its original content, which blew me away because on reflection, that kind of proved to me that what we're doing and the way that I approach this has longevity. Like, it's not a flash in the pan. A pandemic doesn't disrupt it. It actually prepared so many of my clients to navigate and weather the storm of COVID so well. So in retrospect, that was brilliant. Now, COVID actually brought with it an incredible silver lining for me and my business. Like, it was so tough for probably 12 months, and you saw me through some of my darkest days in that period of time thinking, my career's over, my business is dead because no one was going to work. Everyone was at home. How long is this going to go on for? And off the back of it, everybody is now questioning the role of their workplace and the impact that it has on their employees, on the productivity of their business, on well-being. And so, if anything, the work that I do and the services that I provide are now in so much more demand because people go, hey, we get what you do now. We know that this is a thing that we need. Can you come and help us? And so it's really flipped that conversation. In going back and looking at the book, there were a few things that needed to come out. Like, I did have some, sections in there that talked about digital tools and explained to people what Zoom was. Now, if we don't know what Zoom is, we've all been living under a very, very big rock. But at the time that I was writing this, I had recommended to some of my clients, let's jump on a Zoom call. And they looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Like, it didn't make any sense. We were hosting a breakfast where we were bringing in digital experts to talk about how organizations could move their stuff into the cloud and they could engage with more remote technology. And again, so in 2 years, we have come a very long way on the technological front. So that element got ditched. But in terms of, I'd say more got added. I rewrote the entire wellbeing chapter because, for me, wellbeing is about mental, the emotional, and the physical that our workplaces actually support. And the research and the data that is now available because of COVID is just overflowing. And so that gave me so much more wealth of resources to be able to really dig into that topic and to really expand that and to really connect the performance and the impact of our workplaces on employee wellbeing. Whereas before that was kind of a little bit ephemeral. People didn't really know. It's quite intangible. Whereas now there's some really hard data that sits behind that. So that would probably be the chapter that I would suggest has been rewritten the most. And I love that chapter now. It's one of my favorite chapters in the book because it just has so much meaning to it. And it talks about the ability for us to work hybridly and what that does from a social connectivity perspective. It talks about the positive, but it also gives you some, words of caution too, to just be mindful of as an organization on how you sort of navigate that path.
So, looking at whose hands you want to get this book into, like who needs this?
This book was written for the heads of people and culture. And the reason I wrote this book for them is because they are the custodians of culture in the organization. They are the ones who are tasked with these roles and responsibilities of elevating employee experience, helping support the strategic objectives of the business goals and where they're heading. And the workplace is a huge tool in their toolkit that many of them either don't understand is available to them or the real impact that it can have, or they're not getting the seat at the table to be able to support the conversation. So typically when we get engaged to work with an organization, it's done through the facilities team, which often sits in the finance department. And so a lot of the decisions are made around operations, performance, money. Culture is secondary. But this book actually helps connect the dots between the return on investment, the outcomes, the impacts, that understanding and infusing the brand experience and the culture of an organization into that physical environment, what that will do for employee productivity, and then how that then impacts on return on investment, how you can actually save money by going through this process and designing effectively. When we design our workplaces in a way that's responsive to our businesses, you get enormous financial uplift. I really wanted to sort of connect to the philosophies and the heart of those people dealing with the culture side of a business, but to give them the language to be able to communicate the impact and the statistics and the data to those who needed to understand it to order, have them at the table and feel like they were making a valued contribution.
And what about like smaller businesses? Like this is still relevant for them, right? You know, it's definitely more prevalent now, but not every organization has a people and culture manager.
So it's anyone who's really invested in elevating the experience of work for their employees. So whether you're someone who's got 3 employees or, you know, you're a large corporate with lots and lots of people within your team, it's still relevant, and it's written in a way that kind of helps people understand, you know, here are the modern day management philosophies that we are working with. And this is the way that we can then actually use our environment to leverage that and support that and ensure that we're actually delivering on those organizational goals.
I wanted to come back to you. You had a baby while you were writing this book. At the absolute peak of pulling this all together, you had Nash. And I would love for you to share, because from the outside, you know, you do look a little bit like Superwoman. I know and love you, and, you know, I know that it's not all as it all appears all the time. And I think it's important for people to know that. I think it's important for people to know, you know, so I would love for you to share how you got this done with a baby.
So in my naivety, thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to have a baby. I'm going to just hang out at home and, you know, I've got 3 months. I'll smash it out. We'll launch this book in September. So Nash was born in May, and I had originally set myself the deadline of having this book launched in September of 2022. The reality now is the book is being launched in March 2023. So I had to give myself some reality checks and take some pressure off during that period of time. But I also wanted to put those deadlines on myself because I know that if I didn't do that, I would have messed around a lot longer and we still wouldn't have this book completed. So I had to put some deadlines around myself, even though they were completely unrealistic at the time, but it got me moving. It took nights, it took early mornings, it took nap times because, you know, when a baby's little, they sleep a lot more, but then they don't. You know, I remember those days I had him strapped to me and the baby be on and I'm at the stand-up desk and, you know, tapping away. And there was lots of those little mini deadlines that happen through it. And, you know, even when you think you've written a chapter, your editor will come back and go, I just want you to clarify this, or I want you to rework that piece. And it was a real mixed bag of people, external pressure, getting things done, me making these unrealistic deadlines on myself to make it happen. Even now, we still kind of keep shuffling out. So I then wanted to have it out by Christmas. Didn't happen. I wanted it done by February. Well, we're hitting that deadline now. So,
and coming back to how that is being put out into the world, because I know you know there was a lot of soul searching and research that you put into whether or not to go with a publisher or to self-publish. And, you know, I think there's a myth, like lots of things in business, that, oh, it's just self-publishing. It's easy, you know, just upload a PDF and stick it on Amazon and watch the money pouring in. And we know that that is not the case. So could you talk through how you came to the decision of self-publishing and also what that experience has been like for you?
So going back to when I first decided or didn't decide to write a book, I naively, stupidly, whatever, thought that nobody is going to support me to publish this book through a publishing house. I didn't even try. I just made that decision. The story that I told myself was that no one's going to want to read this. Like, the best thing this is going to be is a very expensive business card that, you know, I can hand out to clients. And it probably will be that too. But at that time, you know, again, this was pre-COVID and I was struggling to get people to actually understand the value of what I was doing and what value that was going to bring to them. So I had decided then that I was actually going to go down the path of self-publishing. Because I was explained to me, you know, you can publish, you can self-publish, or there's this hybrid piece in the middle. And so because I made that decision early, what that meant was I needed to find the right people who could support me to do that. So I had to go find my own editor. I had to find my own designer. And fortunately, Emily is very skilled at producing books. So she's not just any old run-of-the-mill graphic designer. She does books. So she understands pagination. She understands printing. She understands, getting things printed offshore. How do we get, the little ISBN number, the barcode and all that sort of stuff. So that's all in her wheelhouse. So I needed to have someone who knew what they were doing. She also then brought Claire, the sub layout editor, to the table as well. So she had a team of resources that sat around her to help make this happen. I'm really glad that I actually went down this path because I've had complete creative license and control over the creation of this book. Now, when I started working with Emily, we thought this was going to be a 200-page book. Well, the book's ended up at 400 pages, so it's double what we expected, but we've had that flexibility to be able to do that. I haven't had an editor driving me to have a manuscript finished before it then went into design. Like, it's been a very fluid process. In hindsight, whilst this was a decision that was made with probably no real evidence supporting the fact that no one was going to publish this book for me, I'm glad that I've gone down this path. I've been able to put it out in the format that I wanted to create it. And maybe now I can get it picked up by a publishing house because it's proven, it's finished, it's done. And I also think there's a huge amount of value in that book for organisations right now. And I'd love to see that happen and get out there much more broadly. But, where we are right now, we're then having to organise all of the print, but also then the distribution. So that's something now I'm needing to project manage on my own as well, like book launches. And so there's a whole other raft of consultants and people that I'll be bringing in now to help me get that book out into the world far more broadly.
Yeah, I think it is important to get that help from people who really, really know this space. And then you've got the benefit of having had complete creative control so that it is the book that you feel 100% comfortable putting out into the world. So from all of this experience, what would you say the biggest thing that you've learned about yourself through going through this process is?
I have learned that there's a lot more knowledge in my head than I thought. To go from 200 pages to 400 pages, I kind of went, holy shit. And there's a lot of work that goes into what I do. And, when I go in, I work with an organization and I guide them through this process and I get them to the outcome. When I see it in terms of all of the resources and the knowledge and the data that I've collated that is distilled through that process and then into that client, it's quite incredible to think about all of those things that I'm considering as we're working through a project to get to that outcome. And all of that is captured in this book. So that is something I'm probably quite proud of, to know now that that's all in there. And this process has been really good in a way to actually help me distill and understand my own knowledge of what I do know and how I help my clients, but also the process that I take them through. And, we've also got the online program that you can do after you've read the book. You can go and do this self-guided process of actually diving deeper into the process. And you kind of look at all of these pieces of things that I've been building over the last 4 years, and they all feed into each other. But what it's also done is it's created a really robust roadmap in terms of how I deliver things now. And it's so much more succinct and I can communicate it so much more clearly. And it's far more compelling now. So yeah, I've learned a bunch of stuff, but the ability to be able to articulate all of that so much more concisely now, I think, is probably the most important thing that's come out of this whole book.
That is massive, because that whole thing is like, I know that I need you, but I'm not quite sure, how you work. And, I have those conversations with people who find it difficult to sort of put in a box what it is that they actually deliver. And you have done this in spades, and you should be really proud of what you've done. So I'm going to ask the final question. The people that are listening who think, I think I've got a book in, listening to what Mel's done and the process that she's followed, I've been toying with the idea of writing a book. What would your final piece of advice be for anyone who's ready to take the leap and bring their book into the world? Yeah.
Sit down, map it out, think about what it is that you actually want to be communicating, break it down into, at least sort of 5 head chapters. What are those 5 key points that you really want to tell the story of? And then just jot down everything that you think you know about that sits underneath and relates to each of those topics. That's how I got started. And then go back and look at what you've already created. Instagram posts, Facebook posts, LinkedIn posts, blog posts, anything that you've created before. Even in our industry, it came down to, pulling copy out of the brochures that we've created or the case studies that we've done, proposals. All of this content is there already. It's just a matter of pulling it together. I think that's probably one of the other things I really wanted to say was around the structure of the book. I've broken it into 5 key chapters, and the first one is about reimagining the future. And that's because all of the data that an organization needs to determine their way forward already exists in their business. And it's just about unlocking it. And so that's a big part of that first chapter. It's about showing you what the possibilities are for the future, but also then getting you to establish where you're at and what's going on in your business so that you can determine, I'm here on the map and I want to be over there, so that you can then work out what that roadmap looks like. And then the next chapter is around brand and culture, because brand and culture are 2 sides of the same coin. Brand experience that we want to be delivering to our customers and to our clients and to our employees all needs to be infused back into the work environment. And if it's there, then it actually instills into the culture, and then it kind of ripples out. The next one is values and behaviors. So we often talk about, the values are the things that are stuck on the wall, but when we dig deeper, it's about understanding what are the behaviors that underpin those values? How do we see them showing up? And our environment has the ability to completely influence everybody's behavior. So you need to be conscious about what is the behavior that you are actually communicating to people through the use of your space. And then there's well-being, which I spoke about earlier, but there is so much content in that now about how can we even measure well-being in the workplace, and what role and what impact does a healthy, well-designed building have on our employees' productivity and their health and well-being. And then the big one at the end is employee experience. And this is one of the meatiest chapters, because employee experience is kind of the culmination of all of these pieces. It's about understanding what is that experience we want people to have. And it looks at personality profiling and, individual work preferences and styles and neurodiversity, and how the environment actually influences and affects all of those things.
Amazing. Well, Mel, huge congratulations to you. Well done on bringing this book out into the world. I'm so proud of you. So thank you. And thank you for sharing so openly as well. I know that that's going to really help a lot of people, and all the links and everything will be in the show notes, won't it, for buying and book launch dates and all of that sort of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, so many exciting things still to come. So obviously print launch date, and then I'm going to be having book launches in Brisbane, Sydney and Melbourne. So I'd love to see as many of you there. So jump over to the website. The link is in the show notes so that you can join the wait list, and you'll be the first to know when the book's available to buy your first copy, and also where the party's at to come and help me celebrate this, because it's been wonderful. And thank you so much, Michelle, for doing this for me today, but also for your support along the way, and, being that voice of reason when I have kind of got to the end point and went, oh, I can't do this.
Like I said at the beginning, you are my superhero. Well bloody done.
Thanks, Michelle. I love it. Thank you.